22 years. That's how long I had been married to my wife before I found out who she really was. 22 years of birthdays and holidays and lazy Sunday mornings with coffee on the back porch. 22 years of thinking I had built something real. The house in Cedar Park, just outside Austin, was everything we had planned. 4 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, the kind of neighborhood where kids still ride bikes in the street. We had 2 of those kids. A life that, from the outside, looked exactly like the American dream. I was proud of it. I was proud of us. My name is Daniel, and I was 47 years old the morning everything I believed about my marriage turned out to be a story I had been telling myself. I'm an architect. I run my own firm, Caldwell Design Group, which I built from nothing over 15 years. My wife, Sandra, was the VP of Marketing at Harlow & Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm based downtown. She was sharp, driven, the kind of woman who walked into a room and immediately understood how it worked. That was one of the things I loved about her. Or thought I loved. Looking back now, I realize I spent a lot of years admiring qualities in her that she was quietly using against me. It started on a Tuesday morning in March. I was at Austin Bergstrom International, rolling my carry-on toward Gate 14, about to board a 6-hour flight to Seattle for a 3-day architecture conference. Sandra had dropped me off at the curb 40 minutes earlier. She kissed me on the cheek, told me to text when I landed, and drove away. Normal. Routine. The same as a dozen other work trips before it. I was standing at the gate, coffee in hand, phone out, when a text came in from a number I didn't recognize. No name, no introduction. Just 4 words and an attachment. You should see this. I almost deleted it. I get spam constantly, and my first instinct was to swipe it away without opening it. But something made me pause. Something about the plainness of it. No link. No sales pitch. Just those 4 words, sitting there like a stone dropped in still water. I opened the attachment. It was a photograph, taken in what looked like a restaurant bar. Dim lighting, wine glasses, the kind of place you take someone when you want to impress them. Sandra was in it. She was laughing at something, her head tilted back the way she does when something genuinely catches her off guard. Her hand was on the arm of a man I recognized immediately. His name was Marcus Hale. He was the managing director at Pinnacle Group, Harlow's biggest competitor, and, for the past 8 months, our firm's most aggressive rival for a major mixed-use development contract in downtown Austin, a project worth $11 million that I had been chasing for over a year. I stood at gate 14 and stared at that photograph for a long time, long enough that the gate agent announced final boarding twice before I heard her. The photo alone wasn't proof of anything. I knew that. Sandra and Marcus ran in overlapping professional circles. A dinner, even a laughing hand-on-arm dinner, could be explained. I boarded the plane telling myself exactly that. I put my bag in the overhead compartment, sat down in 14C, and spent the next 6 hours not sleeping and not watching the movie and not reading the conference materials I had brought. I spent 6 hours thinking about the way her hand was on his arm and the way she had kissed me on the cheek at the curb, and whether those 2 things could exist in the same universe without one of them being a lie. In Seattle, I checked into the hotel, set my bag down without unpacking, and sat on the edge of the bed. I texted the unknown number back. Who are you? Why are you sending me this? The reply came 20 minutes later. Someone who thinks you deserve to know the truth. There's more. Do you want it? I sat with that question for a long time. Because there's a version of that moment where you say no, where you decide that what you don't know can't hurt you, that the marriage is worth more than the answer, that you can live inside the uncertainty and call it peace. I understood that version. I had probably lived inside it for longer than I wanted to admit. I typed, yes. What came over the next hour changed everything. The stranger, I still didn't know who, sent me 3 more photographs and a document. The photos were taken of what appeared to be several different occasions. Sandra and Marcus at what looked like a hotel lobby. Sandra and Marcus at a rooftop bar, closer than colleagues stand. The 3rd photo was the one that stopped my breathing. It was taken through what looked like a window, slightly blurry. The kind of photo you take quickly when you're not sure you'll have another chance. Sandra and Marcus. Not in a restaurant. Not at a bar. Together in a way that made every explanation I had been building for the past 6 hours collapse at once. Then I opened the document. It took me a moment to understand what I was reading. It was a contract. A consulting agreement between Harlow & Associates and Pinnacle Group, dated 4 months earlier. The agreement outlined a framework for sharing preliminary design data on a downtown Austin mixed-use development project. The project had a reference code I recognized. It was my project. The $11 million contract I had been building a proposal for since last spring. And there, on page 3, in the section marked Contributing Consultants, was my firm's name, Caldwell Design Group, with a signature beneath it that was supposed to be mine. I had never signed that document. I had never seen that document. I had never agreed to share a single page of my firm's proprietary design work with our direct competitor. But the signature looked exactly like mine. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the small desk in that Seattle hotel room with my laptop open and went through everything I could access. Emails, cloud files, the shared project folder I'd made the mistake of giving Sandra view access to 2 years ago when we were talking about potentially collaborating on a proposal she said Harlow might want to co-develop it. That collaboration had never materialized. I had forgotten about the access. I don't think she had. By 3 in the morning, I had found enough to understand the shape of what had happened, even if I couldn't yet see every detail. Design documents for my firm's proposal had been accessed from Sandra's personal laptop, not downloaded in bulk. That would have triggered a flag in our system, but opened, page by page, screenshot by screenshot, over a period of about 6 weeks. Enough to give Pinnacle Group a significant look at our approach, our structural concepts, our cost models. I thought about the conference I was sitting at. I thought about the presentation I was supposed to give in 11 hours. I thought about the fact that Sandra was at home, in our house, in the bed we had shared for 22 years, and that she had absolutely no idea I was sitting in a hotel room in Seattle watching our marriage disassemble itself piece by piece on a 14-inch screen. I did not call her. I made a decision in that hotel room that I believe was the right one, even though it was one of the hardest things I have ever done. I decided not to react. Not yet. I spent 15 years building a business by understanding that the worst thing you can do when you discover a structural problem is start tearing things apart before you know exactly what you're dealing with. You document, you assess, you plan, then you act. I gave my presentation the next morning. I shook hands. I answered questions. I had dinner with colleagues and talked about zoning ordinances and sustainable materials, and I smiled, and no one in that room had any idea that I was operating on zero sleep and a grief so fresh it hadn't even found its shape yet. I also, between sessions, made 2 phone calls. The first was to my attorney, a man named Robert Keyes who I had known for 12 years and trusted completely. I told him everything and sent him copies of everything the stranger had sent me, along with the files I had pulled from our system. He was quiet for a long moment after I finished. Then he said, "Daniel, don't touch anything at home. Don't confront her. Come see me the day you land." The second call was to a forensic document examiner I had worked with once on a contract dispute years ago. I sent her a scan of the signature on the consulting agreement. She called me back in 2 hours. "This is a traced reproduction," she told me. "Someone with access to an original signature copied it. It would not hold up to serious scrutiny." I flew home on Thursday evening. Sandra picked me up. She asked how the conference was, whether my presentation had gone well, what the hotel was like. I told her it was fine. The presentation went well. The hotel was nice. She told me about a problem with the dishwasher, and a funny thing that happened at her younger son's soccer practice. I looked at her profile in the driver's seat and thought, I have known this woman for 25 years, and I have no idea who she is. I did not go to see Robert until the following Monday. I spent the weekend behaving normally, which was the most difficult performance of my life. I watched television. I helped my older son with a college application essay. I grilled chicken on the back porch on Saturday evening, and Sandra opened a bottle of wine, and we sat outside until it got dark. I have thought about that Saturday evening many times since, about how ordinary it looked from the outside, about how completely I had separated what I knew from how I acted. I am not proud of the deception, even though it was necessary. But I am, in a quiet way, a little surprised by my own capacity for it. Monday morning, I told Sandra I had a site visit and drove to Robert's office instead. We spent 3 hours going through everything. Robert had already pulled the corporate filings for the consulting agreement and confirmed it was registered. Someone had submitted it to a county records office in a way that would have created a paper trail pointing back to my firm. The implication was clear. If Pinnacle Group had won the downtown contract using design concepts derived from my work, and if that agreement existed in any official capacity with my forged signature on it, I could have been exposed to serious legal liability without ever knowing the threat existed. This was not just an affair, Robert said, folding his hands on the desk. This was a calculated effort to compromise your firm and insulate someone else from the consequences. We began building a file. Over the next 3 weeks, I lived a double life. At home, I was a husband, present, functional, unremarkable. At Robert's office and on calls with our forensics team, I was methodically constructing the most important case of my professional life. We documented the signature forgery. We traced the file access through our system logs. We cross-referenced the timeline of Sandra's data access with dates on the consulting agreement and with internal emails from Pinnacle Group that Robert obtained through a separate legal process I won't detail here. We built something airtight. The stranger texted me twice more during those 3 weeks. Once to ask if I was okay, which struck me as oddly human for someone who had upended my life with 4 words in an attachment. Once to send me one additional piece of information, a hotel receipt, in Sandra's name, from a property 2 miles from our house, dated the weekend I had been in Seattle. The same weekend she had told me she was visiting her sister in San Antonio. I replied both times. To the first, I said I was managing. To the second, I said thank you. I still don't know who that person is. I have my suspicions. There is a woman in Sandra's office who I always sensed had a complicated relationship with her. Someone who seemed to be watching me with an expression I couldn't read at company events over the years. But I have never confirmed it, and at a certain point I decided it didn't matter. Whatever their reasons, they handed me the truth. That is what I was given, and it was enough. The confrontation happened on a Wednesday evening in late April, 22 days after that first text at the airport gate. Our sons were both out. One at college, one at a friend's house for the night. I had arranged it that way deliberately. I did not want them anywhere near what was about to happen. Sandra was in the kitchen making dinner when I came in and set a folder on the counter between us. She looked at it, then at me. Something shifted in her face. A small, almost imperceptible tightening around her eyes. Later, I would understand that she had probably been waiting for this moment, that some part of her had known, even if she didn't know exactly how much I had. I'd like you to look at what's in there, I said. She opened the folder. She went through the pages slowly. I watched her face and did not say anything. There is a particular kind of silence that exists in a room where everything that is about to be said is already known by both people. And that silence has a weight to it that I had never experienced before and hope never to experience again. When she got to the last page, the hotel receipt, she closed the folder and set it on the counter and looked out the window above the sink for a long moment. How long have you had this? She asked. 3 weeks. She nodded slowly. She did not cry. She did not try to explain. She said, "What do you want to do?" I told her. I told her that I wanted a divorce, that I wanted it handled quietly and quickly, and that I had already spoken with an attorney. I told her that the document with my forged signature was going to be addressed through legal channels regardless of anything else, because that was not something I could simply walk away from. My firm's reputation and legal standing were non-negotiable. I told her that I had no interest in destroying her life publicly, but that if she made the process difficult, I would make certain that every person who needed to know what she had done would know it, including her employer. She agreed to everything. I believe she was relieved, in some way, to be out of the performance of it. We had both been performing for a long time. What I was not prepared for was my older son. Garrett was 20 years old. Home for a long weekend, 2 weeks after Sandra and I had told the boys we were separating. We had kept the reason vague, irreconcilable differences, the kind of phrase that is technically accurate and emotionally useless. Garrett had pushed, and Sandra had said something to him in a private conversation that I wasn't part of. And whatever she said had left him with an impression that was not entirely fair to me. He came to find me in my home office on a Saturday morning with a particular kind of controlled anger that I recognized as something he had inherited from me. "She says you've been planning this for weeks without telling her or us," he said, "that you just handed her papers and told her what was going to happen." I looked at my son and I made a decision in that moment. I did not tell him everything. He was 20 years old, and Sandra was his mother, and there are some truths that a person needs to be old enough to hold before you hand them over. I told him that the situation was more complicated than it had been presented to him, that I had made decisions based on information I couldn't share in full yet, and that I understood he was angry, and that his anger was legitimate. "Your feelings about this are yours," I said. "I'm not going to tell you how to feel about any of it. I just need you to know that I did not make this decision carelessly. And when you're ready to hear more, I will tell you more." He stood in the doorway for a long moment. Then he said, "Is Mom okay?" "She will be," I said. "So will you. So will I." He left. We didn't talk again for almost 3 weeks, which was one of the harder silences of that entire period. But he called eventually. He came to the apartment I was renting on the east side of Austin, and we ate pizza and watched a game, and he asked me some questions and I answered the ones I could. He is a good person, my son. He was trying to love both of his parents at the same time, which is not a simple thing to ask of anyone. The legal matter with the consulting agreement was resolved over the following 2 months. The forensic analysis of the forged signature was submitted. Pinnacle Group's attorneys went very quiet very quickly, which told me everything I needed to know about how strong their position actually was. The downtown Austin development contract, the $11 million project I had been chasing, was ultimately awarded to a firm from Houston that had nothing to do with any of it. I lost the contract. I was disappointed, but it was a clean loss. I could live with a clean loss. I could live with a clean loss. What I could not have lived with was not knowing. That, I think, is the thing I am most certain of when I look back at all of it. Sandra and I were divorced 4 months after that Wednesday evening in the kitchen. The settlement was fair. She kept the house. I had never needed the house as much as I needed the firm, and the firm was untouched. Her employer was not contacted. Her personal life was not exposed. I had made a promise about that, and I kept it. I moved into a smaller place near Trail. I run in the mornings, a 2-bedroom on the 2nd floor with big windows and a kitchen. I actually cook in now, which is something I had apparently stopped doing at some point during 22 years of marriage without noticing. There are things you let go of so slowly you never feel yourself letting go. My younger son, Marcus, yes, I know the name, and no, I haven't told him that his name now carries a different weight for me than it used to, is 15 and stays with me every other week. We have a routine. We are, I think, closer now than we were when I was living in the house on autopilot, present in body and somewhere else entirely in my attention. Garrett and I are good. Better than good. He knows more now than he did that Saturday morning in the doorway. I told him, when I thought he was ready. He sat with it for a long time before he said anything. What he said was, "I wish you had trusted me sooner." And I said, "I know. I'm sorry." And that was enough. The stranger with the unknown number never identified themselves to me. I stopped trying to find out, whoever they are. They made a choice to hand me something painful, because they believed I deserved the truth more than I deserved the comfort of not knowing it. I have thought about that choice a great deal. I think it was the right one. I think if our positions had been reversed, I would like to believe I would have done the same thing. I turned 48 last October. I took myself to dinner at a place on South Congress that I had been wanting to try for years, and Sandra had never wanted to go to. I sat at the bar and had a very good steak and a glass of bourbon, and I talked to the bartender about a renovation he was doing on his house. On the drive home, I took a longer route than necessary, just to see the city at night from the highway. The lights of downtown Austin spread out against the dark. I had built some of those buildings, or contributed to them, at least. The lines and angles of them, the way they sat in relation to the street and the sky. There is something about that which still gets me. The idea that the work persists, that you can pour yourself into something, and it will stand there long after whatever else was happening in your life at the time has resolved or collapsed or transformed into something unrecognizable. I am not a person who believes that everything happens for a reason. I don't think there was a plan at work, or a lesson I was meant to learn, or a version of this story where the pain was secretly a gift. What I believe is simpler and less comforting than that. Things happen, and then you decide what to do with them. And the quality of that decision is the only part you actually control. I decided to document everything, to act with precision, to protect what I'd built, and to end something that had stopped being real a long time before I was willing to see it. I decided to be honest with my sons even when it was hard and even when I had to pace the honesty to what they could hold. I decided to let go of the house and the contract and the 22 years of a story that turned out to have been only half true, and to start building something that was entirely mine. Caldwell Design Group won a new contract in February, a mixed-use residential project on the east side, smaller than a downtown development, but cleaner, more interesting architecturally. The kind of project where I actually get to make decisions I care about. We broke ground last month. I was on the site at 7 in the morning the day we started, standing in the mud in boots I hadn't worn in years, watching the first excavation equipment move into position. It felt, I will tell you honestly, like the beginning of something. Not a replacement for what I had before, not a consolation prize. Something genuinely new, with its own shape, its own potential load-bearing capacity. Sometimes the most important structure you will ever build is the one you construct out of the wreckage of a previous one. You learn which materials actually hold. You learn where the real foundations are. And you build more carefully the second time. Not because you are more afraid, but because you finally know what you are doing.